this final video, I want to try to wrap up this overview of what we think online teaching offers you as a student by reflecting in a more general sense on what I see as both, on the one side, the dystopian dangers of online experiments in teaching, and on the other side, the sort of utopian promises. As the director of ISS, what I hope to do is to lead us down a pathway that avoids the worst of the problems and goes towards the promises, always knowing that some of the ideal sort of utopian ambitions that we have will be a challenge to achieve, that they won't come easily, that we have to work towards them, and always knowing that some of the problems, or the dystopian dangers as I'm calling them here, are going to trip us up along the way if we're not careful about where they are. So, to use a geographical metaphor, I am from a geographical background, as you know, I want to sketch here a kind of roadmap between the dangers and the promises, between the problems and the promises of online teaching. So come with me now on this roadmap, and let's follow it. We're going to start by looking at some of the big problems that Steve Harrell pointed towards when he talked about going corporate. We're going to start by talking about the perils of privatization, of commodification, and of corporatization. And let's start there, and we'll see where the journey takes us. So one of the big concerns of a lot of faculty and of a lot of educators is that online education is going to lead to the privatization of public education. That companies like Pearson and Embanet are going to come into public universities and basically sell them their online teaching apparatus, and in the process privatize the whole organization of the educational institution. In the process, what is feared will come about is a commodification of the knowledge itself. Knowledge will be reduced to something that's bought and sold like any other commodity. And with this commodification and privatization comes the fear that Steve Harrell talked about of corporatization, that the university itself would become more and more like a giant corporation trying to extract a profit from the educational process. And this is, of course, completely against the spirit of traditional public education, which was designed to expand access to as many people as possible and to make open higher education open and higher for everyone. So how does online fit into this? I believe that online education really can deliver on the promise of open higher education by expanding access, by doing so by making access more affordable to more people, and also by making the educational experience more adaptable to where you are. If you're space-bound or time-bound, work-bound or family-bound, all those things that constrain your ability to come to school like a traditional student are challenges that are overcome when we switch to offering education in an online environment. And so although those dangers of privatization and of commodification and corporatization are there, to be sure, public institutions like the University of Washington, I believe, can experiment with online teaching, online degrees, in a way that expands access rather than reduces it and narrows it by starting to try and make a big profit out of it. Instead of talking about marginal revenue per student FTE, the alternative clearly is to use the online teaching apparatus to include students who have traditionally been marginalized by the traditional universities, particularly people who have family commitments or employment commitments that make coming to a campus and living in an expensive part of a big city like Seattle something that is too difficult and too costly to make happen. And including more students, including more people from a wide variety of backgrounds, makes the online teaching environment really exciting and really diverse. And it's something I think that has to be valorized and something that we have to celebrate. So this is how we turn around the kind of sort of make lemon out of the broken lemons of commodification. We instead look at the inclusion possibilities in terms of bringing more voices to the educational experience. So another aspect of the corporate model, another problem to be avoided, is treating student customers as particular kinds of niche markets, treating them by their demographic, by their zip code, by some designation such as veterans or single mothers, and then going after those groups as just markets that need to be exploited for profit-making processes. Against that, I think what the online teaching environment really should all be about is networking different students from all these different demographic groups and enabling them to learn from one another. Not treating them as niche markets at all, but by allowing them to talk to one another, take classes together, share ideas together, actually grow in terms of their understanding of social diversity. Clearly, one of the problems of taking a corporate approach to online education is always trying to cut costs. And by cutting costs, offering students very little in the way of support, and because you don't offer them any support, getting high attrition, which means basically losing students, not following them through and enabling them to complete their degrees. That's exactly the opposite of what we want to do with ISS. And yet, if you look around at other online programs, you see very high attrition rates. And those high attrition rates can be explained in large part due to the low support offered to students under the kind of corporate model. What we're trying to offer with our ISS model is something quite different. We're definitely trying to offer you low tuition and make the degree more affordable, but at the same time, we're trying very hard to offer you what we've called high-touch mentoring. A lot of different people, faculty and advisors coming together to give you advice and to hopefully help you stay with the program right to the end. Another cost-cutting pattern found in a lot of corporate online education is the reduction of teaching in the broad sense to a very narrow kind of technical training. This happens for a whole variety of reasons. For one, the people marketing online degrees from other institutions often think that a technical training is what students want because that is what will get them a new handhold in the job market. You get a new credential that is very narrowly targeted to some kind of occupation, they think. And so the degree has to be all about technical training for that one particular occupational opportunity. But these promises of occupational training are often misleading. And besides that, they miss an opportunity to teach for citizenship, to teach in a way that traditional public universities have always done, trying to offer all students a chance to develop multiple sides of their expertise, their technical expertise in particular kinds of scientific and quantitative work, and their interpretive skills, their communication skills, and so on and so forth. All the things that enable you to be a more active member of society and a more active citizen. So rather than reducing teaching to training, one of the things that we're trying to do with ISS is instead focus on helping to train our faculty so that they can still deliver the promise on a liberal arts education in the online environment, so that they can show up and teach online in a way that does foster that broader set of skills and doesn't reduce the teaching experience to just technical training. Another thing that happens with the corporate approach to online education is a tendency to discipline the teachers with the technology so that they're constantly sort of counting how many hours faculty are putting in to doing particular things online and not allowing faculty to experiment with different kinds of online teaching innovations. We're trying to do the opposite. We trust our faculty in ISS to be there for you as much as they possibly can, but we want them also to continue to innovate in the online environment and to take the opportunities to experiment with online technologies in new directions. And one of those new directions, perhaps the most important one, is learning how to engage with you, the student, in a personal way in the online space. To move away from that sort of formal podium speaking kind of professorial position to be more of a guide on the side, a mentor, as well as a professor in the online space. And I think this switch for faculty, including me, myself, it doesn't come easy. We have to rethink how we've acted. We've traditionally been professors who teach at the podium, who tend to do it all on our own. And in the online space, we have to collaborate more, and we have to learn to communicate through discussion forums, through email, in ways that are more personally engaging in a one-on-one kind of way, and don't have that sort of abstract voice from the podium. And certainly this is something that I think the faculty are enjoying trying to do, but it is a shift that they have to do to realize the promise of personal engagement through online technology. One of the things that a lot of cost-cutting institutions see as a sort of a low-hanging fruit with online education is the opportunity to use social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn. All of these social media are suddenly yoked to the project of online teaching. And this can be done in a very sort of cost-cutting, instrumental way that takes away from the opportunities to actually enable you as students to experiment yourselves with this social media and to learn to think critically about it as you experiment with it. And that is the double movement we want to encourage in integrated social sciences. We don't just want, although we do want this, we do want you to become savvy about using social media, but we want at the same time, particularly with some of our courses like Gene and Neff's, we want to enable you to reflect on what that digital media actually represents in terms of changes in our society nationally and globally. And that's a really sort of neat opportunity that this degree offers from my perspective. The opportunity to reflect on the transformations digital media have made in society, even as we use that digital media to teach and learn. One danger with focusing on technology, of course, is fetishism, a tendency to just see technology as, oh, this will solve all the problems. A new learning management system will solve all the problems, will suddenly passport us to a new, better world of education. That kind of technological fetishism is quite dangerous because the really big benefits of using new technologies, new online media to teach only come about if you interact with that media in a intelligent way, in a way where you're always pushing yourself to modify what you're doing and not just think the technology will do it on its own. It involves interaction, and I think that's just as true on the student side as it is on the faculty side. As students, you shouldn't just rely on the technology to sort of do the work for you. You have to sort of take control of it yourself and be an agent within the new technological platforms that we're experimenting with, including the portfolios, of course. Another danger with a corporate approach to online teaching is the commodification of academic knowledge as so-called intellectual property, or IP. IP is a technical legal term that we will discuss in my course on globalization, and it's discussed in some of the other courses in ISS as well. And there's a lot of IP law now, both nationally and globally through the WTO, the World Trade Organization, that says that people who own IP can extract rents from it, or in other words, stop anyone else from using it by saying, this is my knowledge, and it's only my knowledge, and nobody else can use it without my permission. Traditionally, that seemed fine with sort of artistic work, with musical work, but as I explained in my class on globalization, it's a much more challenging issue when it comes to things like global pharmaceuticals. The question that concerns a lot of educators around IP expansion in online teaching is that faculty will lose their own control over the knowledge-making process when they sign contracts that give IP ownership over to the university instead of them as teachers. I don't think these challenges are problems that we can't overcome, but we do need to overcome them. And at the University of Washington right now, there's a lot of discussion about what the right formula is for ownership of the courseware, all the sort of materials that we produce for teaching you online. Does it belong to the faculty? Does it belong to the university? Personally, I believe it ought to be a kind of shared stewardship, because the university has put a lot of money into producing videos and online materials, but the faculty have put a lot of intellectual creativity into developing those materials as well. And there's investment, if you will, from both sides. And I think that has to be recognized legally in a form of IP codification that allows for stewardship from both sides. I'm hoping that we'll get to that point. But right now, you should know that all the course development work for ISS has been done under contracts that specify that the work is done for hire. Work for hire is what it's called contractually. And that means that the University of Washington owns all of the videos rather than the faculty themselves. Nevertheless, the way the contract's written, the terms also allow for faculty to exercise some control over where the ideas have actually come from in the first place. All UW claims ownership over is the actual online video, if you will, not the ideas that came into that video in the first place. As you can tell, we're still working through these ideas and challenges around IP, but I think it's important that you know that this is going on behind the scenes. Now, if you cast your mind back to Steve Harrell's complaints about the dangers of corporatization, one of the things that he highlighted as a worry for him was, although he thought he had the exit of retirement, one of the things that he highlighted as a worry was that academics would be treated like doctors in giant HMOs, that they would be sort of put on the treadmill of just being cogs in a machine that's being organized to make profit from student throughput. So that's the fear. And with that fear comes a concern that as a cog in the machine, your labor becomes disrespected and not treated. You're not treated as a high-skilled worker with rights, and instead you become what's often referred to as casualized labor without rights. Now, the transformation is not so much from treating that I see happening, is not so much from someone like Professor Harrell being turned into casualized labor. Rather, system-wide, what we fear might happen is that universities that are taking a more corporate approach to online will, instead of hiring regular faculty with tenure and with all the job security needed to go on speaking their minds and speaking the truth as they see it, instead of that security of tenure, the concern is that the university will go to where the labor is cheaper and will hire people on a very contingent, ad hoc, adjunct basis to teach one course or a part of a course on a very short-term contract. That's casualizing academic labor. And you should know that one of the things that's guided the University of Washington as it has developed integrated social sciences is a completely different flip side vision of casualizing academic labor. Instead, we're really trying to make sure that all the faculty involved and all the staff involved, as much as we possibly can, involved in making this degree happen, have secure long-term contracts so that they can become really active, invested members of a team that's designed in turn to give you a high-quality educational experience. That's the vision, at least. And I really hope it delivers on that promise of a high quality educational experience for you. I certainly think it stands a better chance of doing so than these sort of sausage machine approaches that casualize academic labor and only hire adjuncts who don't really have any investment in the institution with which they're working. Now, alongside the danger of casualizing academic labor, there's the danger of what happens to you, the student, in a more corporate approach to online teaching. That's the danger of treating you simply as a consumer. Now you might think, oh, that's a good thing. I'm being treated as a consumer. I've got rights. I've paid for my education, therefore I've got consumer rights. And there is something to be said for consumer rights, don't get me wrong. But the danger, as I see it, with treating you simply as a consumer rather than as a student in an educational institution that really cares for you and your growth as a student, if just treating you as a student who ticks off courses and gets a credential, and you sort of see that credential as something that you've paid for, creates a very alienating experience. More than this alienation, there's also a process of, to use technical terms, neoliberal responsibilization that comes with this approach. What this ultimately means, and if you think back to the Deborah Lupton piece or the David Harvey piece, which you read earlier in 301, and you'll understand what I'm trying to argue here. Part of the danger with neoliberal responsibilization is that your success or failure is all reduced to just what you, the consumer, choose to do. And it's as if it's all your choices make your success or failure just your fault. The alternative to this approach, to this kind of responsibilization, is to see your success or failure as part of the larger institution's success or failure. And as we've emphasized, as Dean Howard has emphasized, as I have emphasized as director, and as many of the faculty emphasize, we really measure the success or failure of this degree, ISS, by your success. And we want you to complete this degree. It's a degree completion program that's all about your success, of you getting to that finish line. And when you get to that finish line, we want the education to have made you more than just an alienated consumer of online degree products. We want you to be getting to that finish line as an active citizen, an active, educated citizen who is able to respond to social challenges of all kinds in a more active and engaged way. So if you take that word responsibility, which can get reduced in that sort of more corporate model to just, it's your legal responsibility to make the right choices kind of approach. If you take that and flip it around, I think what you get is social responsibility. The ability, in other words, to respond to social challenges. And that's the ultimate measure of success of this degree, I think. Whether you will come out of it at the end able to respond to all the challenges the world and our contemporary society is going to throw at you. And it will keep throwing challenges at you. It throws challenges at all of us. All these problems I've been talking about are challenges thrown at us by a changing, globalized world. But we can respond more actively if we reflect on these problems as we go along. And I hope that's what this degree, as well as what this little lecture now, is going to be offering you all the way through. Thanks for watching.